Welcome back to Gaga's Fiction. Today, we're blending two anime worlds. What if Naruto entered high school DD in episode 3? Let's find out. We can see a sad 6-year-old redhead girl with an unusual gloomy aura. She's usually all smiles, so why is she feeling this way? Well, she had a disagreement with her parents, and you might wonder why a 6-year-old would argue with them. There could be many reasons, often minor ones. However, this time, it's different. She wanted to visit her friend and the person who saved her. She said it in person, and she took it as a promise. She didn't want her word to be empty. Unfortunately, her parents disagreed, and she didn't like it at all. She didn't want to break her promise, it meant a lot to her. But being a child, she couldn't disobey her parents. Or could she? If they won't let me go, then I'll have to do it without them knowing, she said with determination. She wouldn't let her words be a lie. Maybe my big brother can take me. Her plan seemed straightforward. If she talked to her older brother, he would likely help her. Her plan had no flaws. With that said, she searched everywhere for her brother, but, to her dismay, she never found him. She had no idea where he was, and it left her feeling down. She thought her brother could help her, as he always had in the past, but this time, it seemed impossible. If Big Brother isn't here, I'll have to do it on my own, she said, a bit sad that her brother couldn't assist her. Nevertheless, she wouldn't back down from what she said. With her initial plan failing, she decided on a somewhat more challenging but not impossible plan, to leave her home without anyone noticing. It was her master plan, not too difficult, and she had done it once before, and it had worked perfectly. It's a flawless plan, and I'll see them this way, she said with a smile. Otosan and Okasan will never find out. She had a confident expression when she said the last part. Her parents would never discover what she was about to do, or so she thought, if it weren't for a certain silver-haired figure passing by at that moment. So, Oju-sama is planning to escape. I need to inform Venelena-sama and Zyataka-sama. Upon hearing what she said, the most feasible option was to inform them of her plan. However, she couldn't see her after glancing away for a moment. She had two options, either inform them of her intentions and possibly lose sight of her, or follow her and see where she was heading. The latter seemed like the better option. If they used several guards, including herself, they could find her. But somehow, she always managed not to be found, and losing sight of her could be very bad. Besides, she didn't know where she was going. A child could go to many places, so, she chose the second option, hoping she hadn't made the wrong decision. At the same time, in the Citri mansion. Main entrance. How much longer do I have to wait? A blond guy spoke with a slight hint of annoyance in his voice. He didn't expect anyone to be as late as his sensei. His thoughts were off. The person he was waiting for was taking some time, but not as much as his sensei. So, he could wait peacefully without getting agitated. I don't know, Gaki, so save the comments and let me sleep. I don't get why you're awake so early, someone told him irritably. Early? It's noon already. How can you sleep for so long? For me, that's pretty early, so let me sleep, and why do I need to do anything else but sleep in this place? Okay, good point. But aren't you in a mental space? I get what you mean, but I don't have an answer for that. It's your mental space. Why don't you try it while waiting for the girl? You know, I always had that doubt, but I never tried it. It's a good time now. Being in a sewer is somewhat depressing, right? Yes, do you know what it's like to live in one? It's a nightmare, plus it's very cramped, he said, annoyed by remembering how he lived inside Naruto's seal. Although this place is better than being in your mother's seal, did you know they had me in some kind of sphere with stakes through my tails and limbs? That's too inhumane, even for me. I'd just blast them all with a Baiju Dama, and it would be more merciful than where they had me locked up. Naruto had a sweat drop upon hearing what Kurama said. He didn't expect that comment. However, it did bother him how they had held him within his mother's seal. It reminded him of how Sun was trapped with those chains when he first saw him. He didn't like how he was held, which was why he helped him get out. The positive side was that the Bijou were no longer imprisoned. Well, I suppose I'll try to change this place into something more pleasant. He entered his mental space and decided to make the change quickly so as not to keep his sealed companion waiting. However, he couldn't think of a place that would be comfortable for both him and Kurama. So, he decided to ask Kurama for suggestions. Mental space. Hey, Kurama, since I'm going to change this place, how would you like it to be? Good question. I've never really thought about it. I just want a place that's comfortable and allows me to move without any restrictions. That doesn't give me many options, you know. Sai, then just make it like the forest we had in Konoha, but with hiding spots. You can decide on the decorations. I just want the freedom to move around, not be stuck in one place. It's very uncomfortable to stay in one spot. That's a great idea. I can add some things I liked from the surroundings in Konoha. He spoke with enthusiasm, thinking he wouldn't get to see some places he loved from his childhood and some important places he hadn't seen in a while. Even if they weren't real. Alright, do what you want, but do it quietly. Can't you see I'm trying to sleep? Kurama grumbled, irritated by the noise. Alright. Don't get mad. When you wake up, you'll see it as you said. Several minutes passed, making an hour, and during that time, the blonde managed to change the place. It took him some time because he wasn't sure how to make things change the way he wanted. But once he figured it out, it became easier every time he did it, and with some effort, he succeeded. Finally, he was done. Now, he had a small problem. Where was Kurama? He had been so focused on making the changes that he lost sight of where Kurama was, especially when he transformed into the bars that used to imprison the beast. It was a surprise he wouldn't like, but it looked funny. He held back a laugh and decided to exit the mental space, not wanting to be present when Kurama discovered what he had done. Outside the mental space. I hope I didn't take too long in there. I can't tell how much time passed inside the mental space and out here. Luckily, no one was around, so he let out a small sigh. He hadn't expected her to take so long. He came up with an idea, to go to Sarafal's room. Her personality might have led her to fall asleep, so he tried to enter her room. Just as he was about to step inside, the door opened, but it wasn't Sarafal, it was Sona. He wondered why she opened the door like that, so he asked her. Why are you outside? Sona looked at him in surprise. She didn't expect Naruto at the door. She intended to follow her sister to see what had caught her attention. It might be her chance to find something that could save her from the embarrassing moments Sarafal put her through, so she decided to go, but it seemed she might not be able to do it now that Naruto had noticed her. Or perhaps he was making this part of his plan to get her help, though she had nothing to offer in exchange, but she could try. It's a mission I have to do by myself. But, could you accompany me? She said with the sweetest expression she could muster. It worked on her sister once, so why not with Naruto? A mission? What kind of mission is it? It seemed interesting to him that she had a mission. He'd like to accompany her and see what she wanted to do. But he couldn't be in two places at once, or could he? It's a secret, I'll only tell you if you come with me. She said seriously. She wanted Naruto to help her with this, but she couldn't risk the mission she had set for herself. It was important to her, and she didn't want to mess up what she was about to do. Alright, I'll go with you, but I won't actually go with you. You'll go with me, but you won't go with me? Sona was very confused. How was he supposed to accompany her without being with her? And how are you going to do it? That's easy to answer. I can create clones, remember? Sona nodded, realizing she had forgotten about that detail, even though she had seen it in person. Alright, but you'll have to help me with everything I say. Naruto nodded, a sweat drop on his forehead. Even though Sona was a child, she somehow obeyed what he said without complaint. Maybe it was because of her tone of voice. He decided it was better not to make her angry. He didn't want to hear her voice in that tone. It scared him for some reason, and it somehow reminded him of his mother with her hair raised and forming 9 tails. That was strange. I don't recall ever seeing her like this when we first met. It's probably nothing. He pushed that thought aside. He didn't know why he remembered it, but he didn't dwell on it further. Of course, he'll do everything you say, Naruto said as he made hand signs and created a clone. As usual, a puff of smoke appeared, and Sona could see firsthand how the clone was created. I didn't think he'd do the same thing when appearing and disappearing, though. But why did he make those hand signs? She had a question to ask him, but now wasn't the right time. Someone was opening the door, so she decided to run with the clone to find a hiding spot. The person who had opened the door was her older sister. She let out a small sigh. Her mission almost failed, and she cast a glance at the confused clone. He didn't understand why they had to leave so quickly, but he had a mission to follow Sona's orders, and he would fulfill it, even if it meant using up all his chakra. Alright, we'll start the mission once my sister leaves, so follow me and do everything I tell you, okay? She whispered. The clone simply nodded. He didn't want to be the cause of the mission's failure, so he decided to keep quiet to avoid getting discovered. Meanwhile, with Naruto. The blonde was a little confused by Sona's hasty departure but shrugged it off. It was probably related to the mission she mentioned. Creating a clone for her had been a good idea, just in case she got into trouble. He didn't expect anything to happen, but he'd learned that you couldn't be too careless with kids. He himself had caused all sorts of mischief in the village when he was a child and had always been in trouble. "Sorry for making you wait so long, but I had a little problem before getting here," Sarafal said. Naruto hadn't heard her. She assumed he was upset because she'd made him wait for a while. "I know I took a while, but I didn't think it was that long." She felt a bit down and tried to talk to him again. When she saw him holding back a laugh, she pouted, thinking he was making fun of her. "What's so funny?" she said with a hint of resentment, believing he was teasing her. Naruto responded when he was asked. He could see that she was dressed in a white dress with light brown borders, along with a belt of the same color as the dress borders, and she was wearing a necklace with various jewels. The one that stood out the most among all the jewels was the one in the middle, which had a silver covering. For Naruto, she looked very nice in that outfit, and he wanted to give her a compliment, but he couldn't. So, he replied to her question with a bit of nervousness that he managed to control before speaking. "Oh, it's nothing, just a funny memory from when I was a kid." He spoke with a smile. "By the way, when did you arrive? I didn't see you when you were outside." "I just arrived a few moments ago, but now that I'm here, what did you want to find?" She never let him speak, so she didn't know what he was looking for. Therefore, she decided to ask before leading him around. Even if that was her initial plan. "It was something simple. I just wanted to get some changes of clothes and maybe some books. Do you know where a library is?" For Naruto, saying the last part was something he'd never say in his world. But he wasn't in his world anymore, so he needed to adapt to the place he was in. Even if that meant doing something he hadn't liked since his time at the academy, studying. "That's easy to get, we can head to Lilith. And there's a library here if you want to look for something." She sighed internally, knowing she didn't have to find many things. It's not that she didn't want to spend time with him, she just thought he would be looking for rare and hard to find items. For some reason, she thought it would be like that, even though he just wanted something simple like clothing. Maybe I should take Sotan with us, but I haven't seen her all day. Where could she be? I don't think she went outside, she's probably in the library, always reading books. I think she plans to replace me with those books. Should I burn them? No one steals my Sotan, even if it's a book. She rambled on about stolen sisters and burning books, making expressions unconsciously. Naruto saw her doing this with a nervous smile, and he decided not to ask what she was doing. His instincts told him it would be a bad idea, and they had never steered him wrong and never would. 10 minutes passed with Sarafal acting that way. Naruto took a risk and gently shook her to get her attention. Even though his instincts told him not to, he did it. Fortunately, nothing happened, and Sarafal reacted. "Sai, I'm glad you're calm now. You were making strange expressions for about 10 minutes. Did something happen?" "No, it's nothing. I was just thinking about where Sotan might be. Have you seen her?" She gave him a hopeful look along with a smile. On the outside, she looked like a normal person, but on the inside, she had a plan to eliminate all the books she saw to prevent them from stealing her sister. She had a perfect plan for it, and no one would be able to accuse her, starting with a substance contrary to her family. Yes, I saw her. Walking through the halls. Why do you ask?" She was about to say she'd seen her outside and had spoken with her. But she remembered that Sarafal had a mission and telling her about it might jeopardize her plan. "Oh, I haven't seen her all morning. That's why I was asking. You don't think she'd be carrying a book with her, do you?" Sarafal said obsessively. Naruto got a little scared by her question but chose not to linger in silence any longer and spoke. "And no, I haven't seen her with a book." When he said that, Sarafal seemed more relaxed. It seemed like he would never understand women, they changed their attitudes so quickly, leaving him confused every time they did or said something. He wondered how Uro-Sennin managed to understand women when he always talked in brothels where he used to go. If he had known about this, he would have asked for some advice on women to save himself from future problems with them. It was a shame that he'd never see him again. While Naruto pondered the incomprehensibility of women, Sarafal had other thoughts. It seems the books are safe, but I shouldn't let my guard down. Sotan might want to replace me with something. I won't let them separate me from my Sotan. Alright, leaving the questions aside, I know where we should go. She had a smile and her usual cheerful attitude. It seemed she had forgotten about the books and sisters replacing her and was now focusing more on Naruto. "So, what's the place called?" "We'll go to the capital of the underworld, Lilith." Naruto nodded. That sounded like a good place to get the clothes he needed. And given that it was the capital of the underworld, there should be plenty of things to find there. Sarafal created a magic circle to go with Naruto, but she spoke to him before using it. You know, I can't use magic, so this might not work. She nodded. She had forgotten about that detail. So they decided to do it the slower way, which meant traveling on foot. 1. Lilith. It took them an hour to reach Lilith. Why didn't it take them longer? The reason for that was that Naruto had carried Sarafal the whole way, running and following her instructions so as not to get lost. It took all his willpower not to blush when she told him she'd carry him on her back. He could have gotten there faster, but his body couldn't reach the maximum speed he used to be able to achieve, and he couldn't use the chakra mantle just to go faster. Naruto made a mental note to add weights like Lee did to improve his speed. When he saw him remove the weights during the Chunin exam, he wanted to do the same to gain speed. Maybe I can do that sealing jutsu Uro-Senin used on me during our training. It made me unable to move, but what was its name? Maybe I'll ask Kurama about it when he wakes up and calms down about what I did in the seal's image change. It was just to make it so he could move freely in the forest he had created. There was no issue for him with that, and Kurama might see it differently. He decided to wait until Kurama woke up and calmed down to talk to him. Alright, we're here, let's go and look for clothes. Sarafal exclaimed. Naruto might have made a mistake that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He was accompanying a woman while shopping for clothes. Sarafal dragged him into all sorts of clothing stores, and he almost ended up wearing a magical girl dress. But luck was on Naruto's side, and he managed to escape that fate while they searched for the clothes he wanted. While they searched, he got a good look at the underworld capital. He thought it would be a little eerie, but it turned out to be a pleasant place. They took a little break from their search and exploration and sat down in a nearby park. There were quite a few people around, but the atmosphere was pleasant. I didn't think I would have so much trouble finding a clothing store I like. It seemed easier in my head. He said, feeling a bit down. He didn't enjoy going from store to store, but at least he got to see a bit of the underworld. I wonder if there's a blacksmith around. I don't have any of my ninja tools. I should look for one without my weapons. I can't always rely on hand-to-hand combat. He had forgotten his ninja tools. Thankfully, he remembered before leaving. Sarafal, can I ask you something? She nodded and said, of course, tell me, what's your question? She said with a smile. She was enjoying the search and exploration with Naruto, even if they hadn't found anything she liked yet. She didn't think shopping could be this fun. Do you happen to know where I can find a blacksmith? She got what he meant. He was supposed to be carrying throwing knives and shuriken, right? Oh, I'm sorry to say, but I don't know any blacksmiths. Maybe Surzex-chan knows where to find one. You want to get your ninja tools, right? Naruto nodded. He didn't know how she could figure out what he wanted. Still, he wasn't going to complain. At least now he knew that Surzex could help with the issue of his weapons. I guess we should continue our search, right? Naruto asked. Sarafal smiled, and they left the bench where they had been sitting together. She didn't think shopping would be this fun, even if they hadn't found anything yet. On the other hand, Leviathan, the Mao's sister, and Naruto's clone weren't having a great day. With Sona. At the start of her self-imposed mission, it seemed easy. And it was until they reached Lilith, got lost in the streets, and didn't know where they were. It didn't seem like a good place since everything was in bad shape. She couldn't understand how she got there when she was supposed to be following her sister correctly. She had gone right ahead and right again, then left, or was it straight ahead to the right end? Yes, she was definitely lost. The silver lining was that she had a Naruto clone with her. The place they were in didn't give her a good feeling, so if anything happened, she could rely on someone strong. Excuse the interruption, but do you know where we are? She asked politely. She stayed silent for a moment, not wanting to admit they were lost, at least not yet. So she continued with her typical calm attitude and replied, yes, this is just a shortcut to follow my sister. The clone simply nodded. From the moment he saw who they were following, he quickly understood they were following the boss and Sarafal. For some reason, he didn't understand why, but it was only necessary for him to obey the orders given by the original. And that's what he would do, not failing those orders and never questioning what they asked him to do. We just need to keep going straight, and we'll find my sister, she assured. The clone followed the instructions, and they advanced in that direction for about 10 minutes. Sona became restless. The instructions she had given to the clone were wrong, and she didn't know how to get out of there. Maybe she should have stayed at home and read some books while waiting for her sister. She wouldn't be going through the anguish of being lost. She was lucky to have someone she knew to help with whatever she needed. If the clone wasn't there, she would likely be very scared. When she left her thoughts, She felt the clone stop walking. He stood in front of a rundown house, and she didn't know whose house it was. But the clone seemed calm, so there might not be any bad people in the area. She gave him a look indicating he should approach what could be called the door. The clone did, and she knocked on the door. "Excuse me? Is anyone in there?" Fortunately, it seemed like there was someone inside, sounding like a woman. Her assumptions were correct when a girl opened the door. She stood still for a moment, unable to stop looking at the blonde with curiosity. "Why do you have marks on your cheeks?" She shook her head a little and managed to see the head of a child. "Oh, sorry for not noticing you, but why are you there?" Sona blinked in confusion. "Why do you say that at the end of your sentences?" "It's because I have a little speaking tic." She lied about the reason for her way of speaking. She could be a bit carefree, but she wouldn't tell everyone that she was a yokai. If she did, it was likely that many demons would come looking for her to use her pieces to reincarnate her, and she didn't want that. She needed to focus on her sister first. "Now, what's the reason for knocking on the door?" the girl asked kindly. The one who had knocked on the door seemed to be the girl, so she shouldn't speak to her in a hostile manner. Besides, when she looked at the blonde, she felt an energy similar to her own. He might be a yokai. Perhaps those marks on his cheeks could tell her what type of yokai he was, if he was one. "The truth is, we're lost, and we found your house by heading straight," she spoke, feeling embarrassed to tell the truth. It was time for her to admit it. She didn't think it was convenient to lie any further. How could you get lost on the way? If he was supposed to help her as the older one, how could they get lost on their way? "We were following my one-sama, but she was moving very fast, and we lost sight of her." She might be lost, but she wouldn't give too much information to someone she had just met. Maybe this girl could help her find her way back. "Well, that is a problem. Do you want to come in and relax for a moment? You seem nervous. Maybe if you were calm, you could remember the way. And if you don't, I'll give you the directions to get back to the city's entrance. Is that okay?" Sona accepted the offer. If she couldn't remember the way, she would tell her how to get back. She then realized that she hadn't asked the girl's name, so she decided to do so. "Excuse me, but what's your name?" The girl just paused for a moment and turned her head to give her the answer. "Kuroka, that's my name. What are yours?" "Mine is Sona, and he is Naruto," she replied for both of them, and the blonde nodded when she said his name. The newly named Kuroka looked somewhat puzzled by the interaction between the two. If he weren't blonde, she could say he was her brother. At a glance, it was clear that he was trying to protect her from everything. "All right, let's go inside," Kuroka said calmly. At the same time with Rias. She had executed her master plan and had escaped from her house without anyone noticing. But now she didn't know how to get to Sona's house. She hadn't thought that part through. Now she didn't know what to do. The good news was that she ended up in Lilith, so she could ask for help. But whom could she ask? Luckily for Rias, she spotted Mao Sarafal. She didn't know what Sarafal was doing there, but she wasn't going to question her luck. She approached her and found her with the person who had saved her. She was unsure why they were both in Lilith, but she talked to them anyway. "Naruto." A voice of a girl who recognized the blonde shouted. "Rias?" She looked around to find her. It seemed that she was alone. A girl her age shouldn't be alone, and she gave Sarafal a look as well. She thought she might be with Surzex, but she didn't see him anywhere. She shrugged. If he wasn't with her, he should have someone watching over her. But now that she was with them, there should be no problem with her being alone, as the two of them could protect her. "Oh, Rias-chan. What are you doing alone in Lilith?" Sarafal said cheerfully. "I was trying to find the way to visit Sona and Naruto, but I didn't know who to ask. That's when I spotted you." "What are you doing?" Rias asked, happy to find them and curious at the same time. "We were looking for clothes for Naruto. Do you want to join us?" "Sure," Rias agreed, even if this wasn't part of her plan to visit them. There was no reason why she couldn't. She followed the two to a store that had caught the blonde's attention. They entered the store, which had a simple and cozy look, though not too expensive. "Welcome. How can I assist you?" the shopkeeper said cheerfully. "We're looking for clothes for him," Rias replied quickly, pointing at the blonde. The shopkeeper examined Naruto from head to toe to figure out what style of clothing would suit him. It seemed like he wanted something flexible and comfortable. His clothes resembled what humans wore for exercise. "I think I have what you're looking for. Please follow me." He led them to a section at the back of the store with various types of clothing on display. The odd thing was that there weren't many people in the store. The clothes seemed of good quality, but for some reason, they didn't catch the attention of others. This caught the attention of the blonde and the raven-haired girl, and they found it a bit strange. However, they decided to ignore it. Perhaps the store was new and didn't have many customers yet. "Alright, I hope the clothing in this section suits your preferences," the shopkeeper said before stepping away. The blonde examined all the clothing, and they all looked good, but the only problem was that there was nothing in orange. How was it possible that there was nothing in orange? That's what he wondered. He decided not to make an issue of it, even if orange was his favorite color. He never wanted to let it go, ever since a short conversation he had with his mother. Flashback. When you put the Konoha no Kyoto Senko and the Akai Chizio no Habanero together, what do you get? She asked playfully and cheerfully. You get the orange Hokage T-Bio. He smiled as he said it. End of flashback. Even if that memory didn't seem to have any relation to his choice of favorite color, it was that way for him. He liked to think that his choice for his favorite color represented the combination of his parents. That's why he didn't want to give up orange. He didn't want to make the belief he had disappear. He didn't want to lose the little thing that reminded him of his parents. But apparently, he couldn't avoid it, so he decided not to back down from the decision he was about to make, even if he didn't want to do it. Have you chosen what you want yet? Sarafal asked. Yes, I know what I'm taking, he replied, feeling a bit embarrassed that she was paying for his things. It was strange for him to receive anything, and even more so from a girl. He went into the fitting room and put on the clothing he had chosen, even though there was no orange. It felt strange to him. It was as if he had a void because he couldn't use it. He looked at the ninja headband he had left in the pockets of the pants he was wearing. He was leaving his past behind. This was a new life, a new world, and he wouldn't go back to what he was doing, even if it wasn't his world. He would never give up. I hope I don't look weird in this. I didn't pick anything that doesn't have orange, and now it's strange not being able to use it. I'll have to get used to the new style of clothing. Naruto came out of the fitting room, hoping not to look strange in the outfit. When he saw Sarafal standing still as she looked at him, he had a bad feeling. He thought he must look terrible, but he decided to ask how he looked even though he knew the answer. So, how do I look? He said, trying to appear calm. Sarafal wanted to talk about how he looked, but she couldn't, her voice wouldn't come out even though she was moving her mouth. He looked very good from her point of view, and it was very likely that all the other women would think the same if there were more at that moment. The Uzumaki was wearing a black jacket with a white shirt. His hair was as messy as he always had it, but somehow it arranged itself to make his eyes stand out, making them seem to shine. The marks on his cheeks made him look like a bad boy. He was wearing gray pants and had decided to wear black boots that reached up to his calves. Wow, you look great! The redhead exclaimed. She didn't understand much about clothing styles, but the blonde looked very good in what he had chosen. The present Mao could only nod since she couldn't speak clearly. Naruto was glad he didn't look strange. It was the first time he had chosen a type of clothing without any orange. Looks like you've already found what you're taking, right? The shopkeeper had appeared without anyone noticing. Yes, this is what I'm taking. Hey, do you do custom clothing? The shopkeeper nodded. He had made several styles of clothing in the store. Great. Then you won't mind taking an order. There's no problem with that. You can ask for the type of clothing you want, and I'll provide it. Although you'll have to do it another time. I'll have to close the store due to certain issues until next week. Okay, I guess I'll have to ask for it some other time. He wanted to request it on the same day, but there was nothing he could do if the store was closed. Sarafal still couldn't speak, which was strange for her. But it went unnoticed by the blonde and the redhead. The Mao paid for the blonde's clothing with a bit of embarrassment for not being able to buy it herself. I should do something for her, she's been helping me since I arrived. But what might she like? The three left the store, attracting more attention from people than usual. If they were already recognized for having a Mao with them, now the women were turning their heads more often to look at the blonde. This didn't please Sarafal, but she concealed it since the blonde was ignoring all the people who looked at him. They decided to return to the mansion, as it was getting late. It seemed that the day had passed quickly, something none of them had noticed. So they took the route that should lead them home. The blonde was carefree until he got the memories from the clone that had been with Sona. They weren't a serious problem, but he couldn't tell Sarafal. It could get him into trouble if he did. Hey, why don't you use the magic circle to get back faster? He made an attempt to persuade them. He had to go to where Sona was, and he couldn't go with them at the moment. But only Rias-chan and I can use it. You know you can't use it, Sarafal said. After a while, she managed to speak again and was looking at him curiously as she said that. The blonde had nothing to do in this place, and he didn't know anyone, so it seemed like he wanted to stay in Lilith. On the other hand, Rias was confused to hear that the blonde couldn't use the magic circle. Did that mean he couldn't use magic? She should ask Sona about this if she didn't have answers, then she would ask the blonde in person. It's just that. I forgot something in the store, and it's important. I didn't want you to be delayed any further because of me. Besides, I remember the way back. You two go ahead, and I'll follow later. Sarafal didn't seem entirely convinced, but if it was something important, she should let him go. All right, let's go back, Rias-chan. Rias followed the Mao, wanting to talk to Sona about the question that was on her mind. If it was faster, it was better. They entered the magic circle and disappeared from the blonde's view, who breathed a sigh of relief. He hadn't thought that excuse would work, and he shouldn't make Sona wait any longer. So he made his way to where she was, thanks to the clone's memories. It was amusing to see him trying to follow them. He still didn't understand how they got lost so easily. It seemed that leaving her with a clone was a good idea. With Sona, I was relieved to be able to tell Naruto where I was. The clones I created were very helpful. They could be used for many things, and the best part was that I could gather information from places without being there, just as the clone had told me when I asked if there was a way to call the original. The downside was that I had to do it in front of Kuroka, who stared at the smoke the clone left when it dispersed. She seemed shocked to see what the clone had done and made a mental note not to ask for it to be done in front of anyone else. Well, I suppose they'll come looking for me in a few minutes, I said. Kuroka continued to gaze at the spot where a person was supposed to be, which turned out to be some kind of clone. She couldn't understand how it could be physical. They were supposed to be illusions, only yokai with chakra were supposed to use them. The energy from him was very similar to chakra, so he must be some kind of yokai. But what kind of yokai could it be? That was the question in her mind. She could only distinguish the marks on his cheeks, which didn't tell her much, and that clone hadn't spoken since they were inside. She would have to wait for them to come and find Sona. She somehow liked the little girl. Although she hoped her sister wouldn't have a serious personality as she grew up, she preferred her to be a cheerful person. She was still very young, and she didn't want her to be serious her whole life. She wanted to see her smile all the time. That's all she had. Her sister was her only family. She didn't want to lose her and would do anything for her sister, even if she did something she didn't like. She pushed aside those depressing thoughts. Fortunately, someone knocked on the door, so she could momentarily forget about all of that. Sona looked happy, and it seemed like the person coming to pick her up made her even happier. She looked better with a smile than with a serious face. She opened the door and couldn't help but stare at the blonde guy who had undergone a radical change. She didn't expect that. She had a slight blush on her face, and she wouldn't deny that he looked very good. While he looked cute when she first saw him, she didn't like the orange outfit he was wearing, so she could say that the change of clothes had drastically improved his appearance. "Hello, you're Kuroka, right?" the blonde guy said with a smile. Kuroka became a bit nervous. The blonde guy was a little older than her, and his smile was making her feel something she didn't think was real. She stopped acting that way and spoke, "Yes, that's my name. I guess you're here for Sona, right?" The blonde guy nodded, wondering why she said nya at the end of her sentences, but he shrugged it off. After all, he used to say dada bio, so he didn't have a problem with it. There was no need to look for Sona since she was right beside Kuroka, seemingly admiring the change in the blonde guy. While he felt that no one understood the genius of orange, he felt a little offended but quickly pushed those thoughts aside. He had made his choice, and he thought he should maybe get the pendant he won from Tsunade repaired. It was still broken, but perhaps he could find a way to fix it. "We have to go, Sona. Your sister is back, and she might be looking for you everywhere right now, so we need to go back quickly," he said. She ran to the blonde guy's back, indicating she was ready to leave. Naruto couldn't help but smile at her eagerness. They were saying goodbye to Kuroka, but she spoke before they left. "Wait." The blonde guy turned to look at her, not sure what she wanted, but if she shouted to talk to him, it must be important. What's up? Do you have something to say?" he asked calmly. Kuroka was having a mental debate about whether to ask if he was a yokai. She was one, and it seemed like he might be one based on the clues she had gathered. But if it was just a misunderstanding, and she told him he was one, it could be a mistake. She decided to take the risk and ask. "Yes, there's a question I wanted to ask you." "Of course, you can ask, and I'll answer if I can," he replied. He couldn't reveal much about himself, so he hoped it wasn't a personal question. "You? Me? Are you a yokai?" She closed her eyes, hoping for a yes as an answer. On her part, she couldn't always talk to yokai in these places, and the high-class demons would seek to reincarnate them. "No, I'm not a yokai." This confused Kuroka. If he wasn't a yokai, how could he emit an energy like chakra? No, it wasn't exactly like chakra. He used chakra, and she could feel it. If he wasn't a yokai, then how could he use it? Then, how can you use it? Only yokai should be able to use it, and no one else should. She was puzzled. What do you mean by use it? I hope you're not suggesting. I mean chakra. I don't know how you can use it. Besides, it's because I am a yokai. Kuroka felt happy about the blonde's response, even though he didn't let her finish speaking. She had taken a risk by bringing up chakra. She had been thinking about telling him she was a yokai as well if he didn't hurry to respond, but she reconsidered. She couldn't take such a risk. But for some reason, she wanted to tell Naruto that she was a yokai. She wasn't sure if she should take that risk. It seemed like there were no issues now since he had told her he was a yokai on the street, so she could tell him to gain his trust. She just needed to find out what type of yokai he was, if he could take on a complete human form and had no noticeable distinctions. He had some marks on his cheeks, 3 on each side, to be more precise. She couldn't find anything that could tell her what kind of yokai he was, but she didn't care at the moment. That's what you wanted to know, right? Naruto had to resort to a lie. He wasn't a yokai, but somehow, she had discovered that he could use chakra. He didn't know how or when she found out. This was the best he could say at the moment, and he had to get back quickly. I should head back to the mansion. I can talk to her calmly another day. I don't have time right now. So, you were one. I was very confused. I thought you were a demon. Could we talk some other time, Nya? She knew she couldn't stay for long, and it was evident from her face that she was in a hurry. So, she asked to discuss it later, maybe at a more comfortable moment. She was letting her imagination run, which didn't happen very often, but she put it aside as it wasn't important at this moment. Of course, I'll gladly come back to talk, but as you can see, I have to go, and I'm really short on time right now. Would it be okay if I came in 2 days? He said in a hurry. No problem, I'll be waiting, Nya, she replied with a wink. Naruto caught her attention, and she would do whatever it took to grab his attention. Good, if that's all, we'll see each other at another time. The blonde had run off, leaving Kuroka with a feeling she couldn't quite describe. But she believed she had a pretty good idea of what she was feeling, she just had to wait for him to return to confirm her feelings. She thought that this feeling was too hasty, perhaps it wasn't love but just a simple interest. I should have my answer when I spend more time with him, Nya. With Naruto. The blonde was running as fast as he could. Sona was supposed to be at the mansion, not with him. He had to get there quickly, but he couldn't think of anything. Until he remembered what he could do. It was risky, but it was all he had at the moment. I don't know if I can use it for long. The last time, I used it with Kurama's help. This time, I'm on my own. I guess I have to go all out. He turned to Sona, who was looking around with interest. She should see everything blurry, but I can't risk her seeing me use it. She'd have more questions than I should answer right now. He decided to talk to her and make her follow what he was about to say. Hey, Sona, could you do me a favor? He could barely speak clearly at his current speed. What kind of favor? He managed to say it with effort but got it out. Could you close your eyes for a moment? She didn't understand why he wanted her to do that. Maybe he thought she'd sway too much and wanted her to close her eyes to steady herself. It made sense in his head, so he nodded. Sure, it'd be best if you hold on tighter. This might be very fast, and I'm doing this for you. She didn't resist the favor he was asking, and she closed her eyes as tightly as she could. Seeing that she had closed her eyes, he tried to enter the chakra cloak. It took him a few seconds to do it. His body still hurt from using it, not as much as the first time, but it was much more manageable. Without wanting to push his pain resistance at the moment, he ran as fast as he could with the cloak. While the blonde was running at top speed, Sona had a pleasant sensation. She couldn't fully explain it, but she felt warm and strangely comfortable. Supposedly, they were moving at a high speed, but she didn't feel it. She didn't want this feeling to end. It was very enjoyable, but unfortunately, it disappeared very quickly. It was too fast, and she couldn't understand how it was possible. Still, she liked the ability to feel it. She should go with Naruto more often if she could experience that feeling again. On the other hand, the blonde felt very tired, but he could still stand. Using the chakra cloak was draining him quickly. Maybe it was the chakra's power or the fact that he was using it alone, but he had to train with the cloak instead of just physical training and chakra control. He shouldn't tire out so quickly in a real fight, that would be the worst thing that could happen to him. You can open your eyes now, Sona, Naruto said. She opened her eyes and was surprised to see that they had arrived in no time. How could they move so fast? She could possibly be the fastest person she'd ever met, but she wanted to know how he did it. That's a secret, Naruto said, giving her the kind of eye smile that Kakashi used to give, and stuck his tongue out. Sona pouted, which was unusual for her. Allowing her to be so curious and then telling her it was a secret seemed unfair. You should be inside before me. You were supposed to be here and not on the mission you were supposed to be doing, the blonde replied. He didn't like to call it a mission because it felt more like harassment, but they had somehow gotten lost. A smile began to form as he remembered everything that had happened with his clone. It was amusing to see how sure of himself he was, even when everything was going wrong. But the smile faded as it reminded him of when he was a child and had similar experiences. The circumstances were different, but there was a certain similarity he couldn't overlook. I think it's best if you go in first, Naruto said, confused. Why should he enter first? But as quickly as the question came to him, so did the answer. Oh, I understand what you mean. You want me to watch if your sister is looking for you, and if she is, I have to distract her. That's a good plan. Sona nodded, and it seemed like he could understand her even without many details. Being her friend seemed like a good decision, now if only she liked reading books. They would be the best of friends, and he was the best friend she could ask for, as she didn't have many friends anyway. All right, it's time to execute the plan. Ready? She nodded, and the blonde opened the door slowly. Earlier with Sarafal and Rias. They had returned earlier than Naruto through the magic circle. Although Sarafal was still unsure why she had to come back. Maybe he was meeting other girls, she didn't mind if he did. She wasn't upset at all. If he wanted to do it, then he should. He was just a friend and only a friend, but she couldn't shake the thought of him talking to other girls. Why am I thinking this? He's just my friend. Besides, I just met him, so it must be curiosity. Yes, it's just curiosity. She left her thoughts and looked at where Rias was. Even though she had said there was no problem with them being together, she didn't know if she came with someone or came alone. It seemed that the second option was more likely. She had never seen anyone with her, so she probably hadn't sneaked out of her house, right? Tell me, Rias-chan, why were you alone when we saw you at Lilith? Now Rias felt cornered. It seemed that her plan always changed direction, but this time, she didn't know how to avoid the question, so she had no choice but to tell the truth, or she could tell a lie that seemed like the truth. She thought no one would notice the lie, it was her master plan, after all. I was alone because I got permission to visit them. She had a confident look when she said it. No one could refute her words, so they couldn't believe she was lying. And they let you go alone? Without anyone supervising or guiding you? Why yes, they let me go because no one could accompany me. I asked Oniai-sama, and he agreed. She hesitated at the beginning of her response but recovered before it seemed false. Sarafal believed her when she said that Surzex had let her go without any problem. She could have done the same with Sona. But leaving her alone wasn't possible if she gave her permission. Maybe there was someone watching her from a distance? Surzex loved his sister so much that he wouldn't let her go without anyone supervising her. She was just a child, and something could happen to her. Well, I guess you came to see Sona, right? Rias nodded and went to find Sona, or at least she would try. She was always around everywhere, so it was hard to know where she might be. The most common place was the library. She headed there, hoping to find her and ask about the blonde. If she didn't get an answer from her, she would have to ask the blonde, even though it would be more challenging to get the information from him. The Mao was left alone in the hallway, feeling a bit tired. It was unusual because she was usually cheerful and didn't get tired so easily. But she wanted to rest at that moment. Not before seeing her so tan, though, so she decided to search for her sister. It was at that moment that Naruto entered cautiously, trying not to make too much noise and attempting not to be seen. He would have succeeded if it weren't for Sarafal, who was watching him with a bead of sweat on her forehead. It was as if he wanted to be a ninja until he remembered that he was one. Even if he was, it was funny to see what he was doing. Why is he drawing attention to himself when he's supposed to be entering quietly? That was the question going through the Mao's head at that moment. She decided to stay silent and watch what Naruto was doing. It seemed like he was trying to see all possible perspectives from his position. Somehow, he couldn't see her. Maybe he was in a position where it was impossible for the person inside to see what the person outside could see. I think I should go to where Naruto is, he seems nervous for some reason. With just one look, she could tell he was nervous. You didn't need to be very observant to notice it, and maybe he had done something he didn't want to talk about. That should be the reason he's so nervous, but how did he manage to arrive so quickly? We took an hour when he brought me. Did he do something to get there just a few minutes after us? The distance he had to cover was long, and it was a mystery to her how he arrived so quickly. I shouldn't be beating around the bush about how he got here, I should just talk to him, as she said. She approached the blonde. With Naruto dash. After glancing down the hallway and not seeing anyone, Naruto felt lucky and thought that there wouldn't be any issues with executing Sona's plan. He let out a suppressed sigh he didn't even realize he was holding. Why am I feeling nervous? Maybe it's due to using the chakra cloak. I was lucky I could use it without Kurama's help. Perhaps I should learn Kenjutsu? It has always intrigued me. Plus, it would make me look cool. His thoughts would have continued if he hadn't felt a tug on his pants. Sona was calling him, and he was about to respond when, to their dismay, Sarafal appeared. If he wasn't nervous before, he certainly was now. He signaled Sona to stay put, as the elder Ojimura might detect her presence. This could spell the end of their plan, and he would be the one in trouble for concealing what was going on. It didn't take a genius to understand how much Sarafal cared for her sister, and he had hidden what he was doing from her. It wouldn't be a big problem if it weren't something dangerous. But what he had done was very risky. It might upset her significantly not to have been informed. Now, they were taking a chance with the plan they had hatched. A simple idea struck Naruto, one that might save them. It was straightforward but highly functional. Nothing could go wrong if he executed this idea. So he decided to do it, but he needed to wait until the Mao got closer to put it into action. Fortunately for him, Sarafal was approaching exactly as he hoped. At the same time with Grafia. She had followed Rias the entire way and was surprised at the stamina she had for a child. She wondered if she might become a very strong demon in the future. She thought she might even surpass her brother, but there was no need to jump to conclusions. She needed more time and experience to reach the level of power her brother had attained. She was still just a child, and there was no need to rush to obtain power. After following her and seeing that she was at Lilith, she wondered if this was the place she wanted to go. If she had asked Surzex, he could have accompanied her, but she couldn't do that. She remembered what he had done to prevent her from escaping while she was at work. She thought she should finish her work first and then do what he wanted without her having to take extreme actions. Seeing Rias wandering aimlessly without any particular direction, she realized that this might not be the place she wanted to go. She saw that she had stopped for a moment and was looking at someone. She turned her head in the direction she was looking, and there was Mao Leviathan. What she was doing there, Grafia didn't know, but it seemed Rias wasn't looking at her. Maybe there was someone else or something near her. Her doubts disappeared when she heard her scream someone's name. Naruto. She had never heard that name before. Could it be a friend? She wondered. But when did she meet this person, and why didn't she mention him before? She had never mentioned knowing someone else. That was strange. She needed to tell Surzex about it. That person could be a demon trying to harm Rias, and she couldn't allow that. Maybe she was jumping to conclusions, but maybe her friend was with Sarafal. At least it didn't seem like a bad person. She found it curious that he had marks on his cheeks that reminded her of a cat's whiskers, which made her chuckle. She stopped doing everything she was doing, even breathing. She had never, ever laughed during her working hours. She was curious to see what he was like, and if he could befriend Rias, he couldn't be a bad person. Maybe she should introduce him to Surzex or tell him that his sister enjoyed being with the blonde more than with him. It was very likely that he would be depressed to hear that and might see him as a rival for his sister's attention. It would be fun for her to see him like that. It seemed she had something new to do. She had to explain to Xioticus and Venelena where Rias was going. She couldn't leave without them knowing. Or she could tell Surzex and have him start a search for Rias. The second option seemed less appropriate. But she was a bit bored, and a little fun wouldn't hurt. She saw them heading to a clothing store she had never seen before. Although she couldn't go to Lilith all the time, it was strange that there weren't many people inside or that they ignored the place. That was unusual. When something new opened in Lilith, all the demons would go to see everything the new place had to offer. Maybe it had opened before, and I just didn't notice this place, that's what she thought. In any case, she didn't have much time to explore Lilith, she always had something to do. But following Rias could be considered lucky. She took care of the things she needed to do and decided to take a stroll around the mansion before going to see Surzex. She didn't expect that this would lead her to overhear Rias's escape plans. After seeing that Naruto had decided what kind of clothes he would wear, Grafia was about to leave because there was no need to stay any longer. She knew that if Rias was with him, she would know where she was going. Her surveillance job had ended. She didn't wait to see Naruto leave. The change of clothes suited him very well, but she would never say that out loud. Besides, she was married to Surzex. Nevertheless, she couldn't help but look at him for a moment before he left. She decided that she had seen enough and went to a secluded place where no one could see her. She created a magic circle and returned to the Gremory mansion to find Surzex. She wanted to see how he would react if she chose the second option. She also had a sense of fun, albeit a different one. He opened Surzek's office door and saw him just as he'd left him, bound by many chains and some straps from his waist down to his legs. Those chains absorbed magic every time he tried to cast a spell to free himself, which might not be a big problem for a Mao. Why didn't he try to get rid of them? Besides having those chains, if he removed them, he couldn't see Rias for a month, which was hell for a Siskin like Surzex. Or in this case, it would be like taking him to heaven and torturing him with all sorts of light magic. That's why he wasn't complaining and kept doing his duty. Surzex-sama, said the silver-haired maid. What's wrong, Grafia? The Mao, despite being against being held like this, wouldn't complain. He didn't want to stop seeing his Ria-tan. He would start a war before not being able to see her. No one has seen Rias Oju-sama all day, she might have been kidnapped. Those last words echoed in the redhead. His whole world was falling apart, someone had kidnapped his Ria-tan. That was a declaration of war against him. No one did that without him being involved. He quickly stood up from his chair, hit his desk, and shouted. We must find her. Even if we have to wage war with the other factions. The redhead took it very seriously. He just wished he could find Rias in time, he would need more people. Maybe Sarafal could help me, Naruto is at the Citri mansion. Should I ask for his help? The Mao had various ways to get help and how to make them cooperate. The silver-haired maid heard Naruto's name again, it seemed he wasn't a stranger. Surzex already knew him, so he wasn't an enemy. She was relieved to know that he wasn't an enemy, the redhead was hard to deceive, so he could trust the blonde. Surzex didn't wait long in his thoughts and created a magic circle to the Citri mansion. He would ask for help from all the Mao and all the demons he could. Even if he had to beg them to do it, he didn't want his sister to be with the fallen angels or angels at their mercy. If he had to choose, he would rather have her kidnapped by angels instead of the fallen ones, you never knew what could happen with them. And it could be worse if it was a woman, in this case, a girl. But they might be worse than a demon anyway. Grafia. Close Lilith and all the territories of the other clans, no one is allowed to leave the underworld until I say so. The redhead was very agitated. He said no more and left through the magic circle. Back with Naruto. The blonde was waiting for Sarafal to approach so he could execute his plan. Everything was in order until a magic circle appeared, which Sarafal quickly recognized. It was Surzex, he thought he was looking for Rias, so she stayed by the blonde's side. He wondered who was in the magic circle, he didn't wait long to find out. He wondered why he had come again, maybe he had more questions for him or was looking for Rias. It was more likely he was looking for her, but he didn't know how the Mao could have known where she was. He never asked Rias if she was coming alone. Or maybe he did and forgot to mention it? To be honest, he didn't remember doing so. It's not like he had a problem with her staying with him and Sarafal, anyway. He noticed that the Mao was very nervous and agitated. Why is he like this? Did something happen? He decided to ask him about his condition. But before he could speak, the redhead did. Have you seen Rias? This question was quite surprising, or possibly very curious. Wasn't he supposed to know that she was here? While the blonde didn't know that Rias had told Sarafal that she had her brother's permission, he thought he already knew, and that's why he had come. Yes, said the blonde and the Mao simultaneously. They had both taken a firm position and couldn't help but shout. It could be some game or a joke. And he might tell them it was all an act he did with Rias, that's what was going through Sarafal's head. While Naruto couldn't help it because it reminded him of Tsunade's screams, and when she did, he couldn't refute anything. Furthermore, he was agitated by the sudden shout. In addition to what was happening outside, the seal had awakened the bijou inside, unbeknownst to him. Since it was waking up, he might be in for an unpleasant surprise, and it would be quite amusing for the blonde. Upon hearing the response, Surzex remained still for a moment. Wasn't it supposed to be that no one had seen Rias and she had been kidnapped by someone? Maybe he had misheard, so he decided to verify what they had said. Did you just tell me you've seen her? Yes, they said simultaneously again. So, do you know where she is? Only the Mao nodded. The blonde had seen her, but he didn't know where she could be. Sarafal spoke to him. She was looking for Sotan, so she must be taking a few turns while we talk. The redhead just fell silent. Taking advantage of their silence, Sona had entered unnoticed, which was very difficult to achieve being two Mao and the other a ninja. Or it would be if they weren't focused on something else. Seeing that she was already inside, she decided to walk down the hallway as if she had just passed by. Sarafal noticed Sona walking and ran to hug her. She hadn't seen her all day. "There you are, so tan," she exclaimed with joy. The blonde was looking a bit nervous. None of the plans they had made had been executed, but in the end, everything turned out fine. "Please, Wani-sama, let me go." There was a hint of supplication in her voice. She felt tightly squeezed in the hug she was receiving, as if her bones might break if they didn't release her in a few seconds. Luckily, her sister reluctantly let her go, though she grumbled in her mind about wicked sisters who didn't understand what it feels like not to be able to hug their younger siblings. "Did you happen to see Rias when you were coming here?" The redhead, who had broken his silence, asked Sona. She shook her head, indicating she hadn't seen Rias when she arrived. She had just entered. "Hey, Surzex, why were you so agitated when you arrived?" Naruto asked the red-haired Mao. "Oh, it's nothing. It was getting late too. Bring Rias back." "If it was getting late, and I didn't know where she was," he said a bit nervously, accompanied by a smile. Naruto shrugged, not understanding why someone would get so worked up just for arriving a little late. Maybe they had something important to do, he thought to himself. He didn't have any more ideas about why he would react that way. "Do you want us to help you look for her?" Sarafal offered. She knew the place very well. It was where she lived, after all. Surzex nodded. He didn't know the entire mansion, and he could have just arrived and seen some rooms, but he had never known the entire mansion thoroughly. "But, I don't know the place. Won't I end up getting lost?" Naruto asked the Mao. What Naruto said was true. He didn't know where everything was. How could he move around without getting lost? Surzex had the idea that Naruto could use his clones. If he could make more of himself, he could search in different places without having to move. He found it a useful ability at the moment and had more ideas on how to make clones like Naruto's. They could save him from doing paperwork. Should I ask him to teach me how to do it? He was eager to ask, but at the moment, he had to find Rias. He also realized that someone had played a rather tasteless prank on him. No, he knew who had done it. Unfortunately, he couldn't do anything against that person. Or maybe he could? He dismissed the idea. He didn't want to suffer even more if he decided to act on it. "Why don't you use your clones? They should help you avoid getting lost while searching for Rias," the Mao suggested to the blonde. Naruto had the impulse to facepalm. How could he forget about the clones? Even if they didn't know exactly how it worked, he could use them to navigate the mansion while looking for the redhead. "All right, now that the problem of getting lost is solved, Naruto. Shall we start looking?" Sarafal said with a smile. Everyone nodded and went in different directions. Naruto stayed behind, waiting for them to leave. When no one else was around, he created 3 clones that appeared in a horizontal line. "As you know, we need to find Rias. If you find her, disperse to let me know her location." "That's it, disperse." The clones nodded, and Naruto sighed when they had left. It seemed he couldn't rest all day, there was always something happening, and he ended up involved in some way. "I guess I'll have to move too," he said. With that said, the blonde embarked on a rather short search, but it was something he had gotten himself into, so he didn't mind helping. With Rias. She was looking everywhere, trying to find Sona, but unfortunately, she never found her. She let out a sigh when she couldn't even find a clue that could tell her where Sona might be. She resigned herself to her search and decided to turn back. The problem was returning. She had gotten lost in her search. Which way was it? Since she couldn't remember the way to go, she decided to always go to the right. For some reason, that direction seemed right. Her instincts had never failed her, so she went to the right. Going in that direction, she found the library. She had already passed through this place. So it seemed she was on the right track to get back. Now, instead of being confused, she was sure. Well, I must be close to the dining room or close to the entrance? Her certainty disappeared as quickly as it had come. I think I should make a map of the entire place. She thought it was a good idea to have a map. Even if her house was the same size. She hadn't explored the whole place as she would if she were at home. She continued to the right. If it worked before, it would work now. She had been going to the right for about 5 minutes when she stumbled upon a blonde. It seemed like she was very lucky. So she decided to call him for help to get back or at least not be alone in trying to find her way back. "Naruto." The blonde turned and saw Rias. It seemed he had the luck to find her and not his clones. He didn't have to walk much, Rias was near the entrance. So all he had to do was go back, but now the problem was how to let the others know that he had found her. Maybe the clones can help? He nodded to the idea he had. But he stopped, remembering that Rias hadn't seen any of his clones and didn't know he used chakra. Should I tell her, or could I do something to make her not see me for a few seconds? That was the blonde's dilemma. Although she heard that I can't use magic, maybe I could tell her that I use another type of energy without mentioning chakra. No, I don't think I should mention chakra for now. He decided to say something that came to mind without having to reveal that he used chakra. He could say it, but now wasn't the time. Hey Rias. Is something wrong? What do I say now? It seemed easier in my head. Do you want to see a magic trick? I hope it works, I can't think of anything else, he thought nervously. But aren't you supposed to not be able to use magic? You know, I didn't even know magic existed a few days ago, he said, with a bead of sweat sliding down his forehead. It's not that kind of magic, it's something that doesn't necessarily require using magic. Do you understand? He hoped she did because he didn't understand what he had just said. He hoped this kind of magic existed. He didn't want to come across as some kind of liar, he wasn't like that, and he never would be. It seemed to have worked as Rias nodded, so the blonde sighed and said, "All right, watch closely." The redhead stared as if her life depended on it. The blonde proceeded and made the hand gesture he always used when using the jutsu. Rias was confused when she saw him make a type of cross with his fingers. Why is he doing that? Her thought didn't last long because a cloud of smoke appeared. She had forgotten what she had seen before and waited with great anticipation for what was supposed to come out. With Sarafal. She had finished searching for the part she was supposed to, but she found no trace of the redhead. Maybe someone else found her. Should I go with Surzex or Naruto? Surzex can use a magic circle to return, so I think I should go with Naruto. Her doubt disappeared with what she had just said. Naruto can only walk around and doesn't know anything. I should have shown him around the mansion before, she said, embarrassed and scratching her head. She should have shown him the place when he arrived before something like this could happen. I'll have to turn back before Naruto goes further from the entrance. I hope he doesn't get lost in the place. With that said, she went back, hoping to come across Sona on the way. She was also helping, but she didn't know where she was. At least she wouldn't get lost on the way, so she could be at ease about that. She had been walking for about 3 minutes and arrived at the library. It seems she had taken a little detour. I ended up using the wrong hallway, she said with a nervous smile. At least no one will know that I got low. She couldn't finish because someone had spoken behind her. Know what? Upon hearing a voice behind her, she couldn't help but tense up a bit. She was about to scream, but she was a Mao, so she had to behave like one, or at least try. Are you okay? The person behind the Mao asked. She turned and saw Naruto. It seemed that taking that detour had served her well. Why yes, I'm fine, Sarafal scolded herself for stammering. Besides, what I was about to say wasn't important. She finished with a smile to prevent him from noticing that she had been startled by his sudden appearance. If you say so. By the way, I found Rias, Naruto said with a smile. But where is she? She's with the original. Original? Yes, in case you didn't notice, I'm a clone. He spoke proudly of being a clone. Then where's the original? He should be at the entrance or nearby. They left about 2 minutes ago, so you could catch up with them. Sarafal nodded and went towards the entrance. Now she just needed some sister time with Sona. It seemed that time was moving very slowly if she couldn't see her sister. It looked like she was becoming a bigger siskin. Meanwhile with Surzex. The red-haired Mao was nearly going insane, and the reason was very simple. He couldn't find his sister anywhere, and he was starting to think that both Sarafal and Naruto had teamed up with Grafia to play this prank on him. Maybe he couldn't do anything to Grafia, but he could certainly do something about the blonde and the Mao. If this was all just a joke, someone might not want to leave their room for a whole year. The redhead was plotting torture plans to make them pay for this, but he stopped and thought, what if it's not their fault? What if this is all Grafia's plan, and they had to go along with it? She can be very frightening when she wants to be. And I know what she's capable of, the Mao continued with his thoughts while a blonde approached a few meters away. He looked at the redhead strangely, as he was moving left and right very quickly. He didn't know what to say at that moment. Should I tell him that we've found Rias? The blonde had that existential doubt. How is it that I can have doubts about things when I'm a clone? Could it be that I can do more things without having to do what I was ordered to do? He shrugged off that thought. It wasn't the time for doubts. Not right now. He should ask the original about several things. He let out a sigh and decided to speak to the redhead who couldn't stop moving. I think if I give him a little tap, it should be enough to get his attention. I hope he doesn't get angry about the tap. He whispered. Just as the clone said, he decided to give a small tap. Maybe he went a little overboard, but it would be worth it. Surzex continued with his thoughts about how terrifying Graphia was. He couldn't do anything, so he resigned himself. He was about to look in front of him, and when he did, he received a blow. With his defenses down, the blow sent him almost to the end of the hallway, nearly reaching the garden. He managed to recover before reaching the end of the garden. He became serious after that. If someone was capable of hitting him without him realizing it, then they must be very strong. He looked up a bit and saw the blonde, who looked nervous. He wondered why he was like that and let go of his seriousness, returning to his calm state as he spoke. "Oh, it's you, Naruto. Do you know who hit me?" said the red-haired Mao, looking around to try and find the culprit. "And no, I haven't seen anyone," the blonde replied as best as he could without showing his nerves. To Naruto's misfortune, Surzex noticed the slight hesitation. "Why are you nervous?" he asked. "For nothing, it's just. I'm happy about the news." That was the only thing that came to mind to downplay the blow he had given. "What news?" the red-haired Mao asked. "We found Rias, that's why I had." He couldn't finish speaking because the redhead threw himself on him, grabbing his shoulders. He was too close for Naruto's liking, so he tried to move him a bit, but the redhead had more physical strength than he appeared to have. "Tell me where she is," the Mao spoke with a lot of desperation. At the same time, he moved him back and forth. Naruto couldn't speak properly, but he still tried. "She's int the entrance," he managed to say, and then he managed to free himself from Surzek's grip. "Thank you," said the Mao, running from the place, forgetting that he could use a magic circle to get there faster. "Sigh, at least I saved myself from what he might have done to me with that blow." "What is his skin made of?" "It was very tough." "Are all demons like this? Or just the Mao?" Naruto's clone never expected his skin to be so tough. He thought that demons would be like the ninjas in his world, having various abilities. But he never thought that they also had very tough skin. He wondered if demons had any other characteristics apart from that, or if only the Mao were like that. He decided to put it aside and let the original deal with everything. After all, he was just a clone. And he vanished in a puff of smoke. Back with Sarafal. Sarafal had reached the entrance and saw Naruto and Rias. The blonde looked a bit uncomfortable. She wondered why he was like that, so she decided to look at the redhead and found the answer. Rias was staring very intensely at Naruto, perhaps too intensely. Could she want to tell him something? She had a sister, but that didn't mean she knew everything about boys, and Rias could be a bit unpredictable at times. She tried to approach, and as she was doing so, Rias spoke to Naruto. "If the clone you made wasn't magic, then what was it?" she said with a very intense look, trying to see if he was telling some kind of lie. That was something called a jutsu. You see, I'm a ninja." He couldn't say more because Rias, upon hearing ninja, asked him again, "What's a ninja?" she asked with great curiosity. Now the blonde didn't know what to say. Should I tell her what ninjas are like in this world or in mine? He preferred to tell her what a ninja is in his world, although they are different from those in this world, from what he had heard Sarafal say. Anyway, I have to tell her what ninjas are like in this world, even if it's different from mine. But what do they do here? Is Sarah similar to what I do? Fortunately for the blonde, Sarafal appeared, saving him from the question. He was a ninja, but maybe a ninja in this world was very different from one in his world. Ninjas are people who dress in black and throw stars and knives. They also move very stealthily, and they are from Japan. I could tell you more, but it would be better if you look it up yourself. That's what Sarafal said as she approached and made Rias interested in learning more about ninjas in the future. Naruto thought they weren't that different if you took away the jutsus and the ability to use chakra. They would be like civilians, but with a lot of combat experience and apparently always dressed in black. He didn't really like that color much, but it's not like it didn't suit him, so he spoke again. "That's what ninjas do," Naruto said, taking advantage of the description Sarafal had given to Rias. Naruto made a mental note to visit the library and research ninjas in this world. He had wanted to do it since he heard the first description. But he thought Sarafal might lack information about ninjas in this world, but it seemed that wasn't the case. "But that doesn't tell me anything about how you could make a clone. Are you hiding something from me?" The redhead spoke accusingly. She looked adorable instead of intimidating. Naruto shook his head and told her, "I'm not hiding anything. It's just that I'm a special kind of ninja who can do these things," he said, holding back the smile that was about to escape. "So, not all ninjas can do what you do?" Naruto nodded in response to her question and said, "That's right, not all ninjas can do it." "Does that mean you're an awesome ninja?" Hearing those words, he remembered when he used to shout that he would be an awesome ninja with very powerful jutsus. So he replied with a proud smile and voice, "Yes. I'm the coolest ninja you'll ever find." Both girls, upon hearing his proud voice, had a bead of sweat appear on their foreheads. It seemed that the blonde was very proud of being a ninja. The atmosphere became a bit quiet. No one knew what to talk about, except for Naruto. He had the memories of the clone that was with Surzex and couldn't say nothing, so he spoke. "You know, Surzex is about to arrive. I think it's best to get out of the way." Both the redhead and the raven-haired girl gave him a look of confusion. It only took a few seconds to understand why he said those words. They could hear someone running in a hurry. For some reason, that person was creating a cloud of smoke while running, but both knew who it was. Naruto had just told them, and they followed the blonde's advice and moved aside. The cloud of smoke stopped when it reached the door a few meters behind them, and when the smoke cleared, they could see Surzex looking tired and disheveled. "Are you okay?" Sarafal asked Surzex. Seeing his appearance, it seemed like he had run the entire way. "I don't think he decided to run the whole way, right?" The Mao could only nod. He was still trying to catch his breath. It seemed that he had gotten tired of running, or he was just anxious. No one knew the answer. It's not like it was very important anyway. So they left it as an unanswered question. "Where's Rias?" the red-haired Mao said, looking around, but unfortunately, she wasn't in plain sight. Because the moment she arrived, she had hidden behind Naruto. "Hey, Rias, why are you hiding behind me?" Naruto whispered to her. If she had run quickly to hide, there must be a reason for that. "Just be quiet, please," she whispered back. It was one of the few times she said that word and didn't mean it, but this time she did. Naruto nodded to Rias' request, so he stayed silent, just hoping that she wasn't getting into some big trouble. I hope Oniai-sama doesn't get angry for not telling him where she was, but it's also his fault for not being able to find her when I looked for him, Rias thought. For her, it was also her brother's fault. She had searched for him everywhere and never managed to find him. So she should also take some of the blame, she was sure of that. "Rias was with us, but I don't know where she is now." "Have you seen her, Naruto?" Sarafal said. The blonde tensed a bit upon hearing his name. Luckily neither of the Mao noticed. He didn't know what to say, so he just shook his head. Simultaneously with Sona. She was helping search for Rias, but couldn't find anything that could tell her where she was. She decided to go back, hoping that someone had found her. "Why didn't Naruto want to tell me what he did to get here so quickly?" she said in a whisper. She wanted to know, but the blonde told her it was a secret. That made her want to know even more. She just resigned herself to that. Maybe Naruto will tell her at some point. They were friends, after all. "Are we friends?" she wondered. I never asked him if we are. It was true that from her perspective, she thought they were friends, but could Naruto say the same? She didn't know the answer to that. Should I ask him to be my friend? The black-haired girl had that little question in her head. She liked Naruto a lot, and he might be her only male friend. It's not like she knew more guys anyway. Being absorbed in her thoughts, she didn't notice that she had arrived at the entrance, blinked a little when she saw where she was. This time she looked carefully and saw Rias behind Naruto, hanging on his back, which was a bit strange. Why is she doing that? What happened for her to be like that? Even if Sona wanted to know the answer, she couldn't find out now. Her sister had noticed her again, and she was getting tired of her always clinging to her when she saw her. So before her sister arrived, she ran as fast as she could towards Naruto. In doing so, she pushed the blonde to the ground, revealing that Rias was behind him, or rather, on his back. There was a very long silence among all of them until the red-haired Mao spoke. "Naruto, do you have an explanation for this?" he said firmly. Can you explain that I just found her?" he answered nervously. No, that's not the right answer. If the blonde was nervous before, he was even more so now. He turned to look at Sarafal, and she had the same expression as the Mao. He wondered why and simply followed her gaze. He could see Sona behind her, and now he understood why they were looking at him the same way as Surzex. From his point of view, he was the victim of something he didn't do, or at least he wasn't responsible for everything. And from the Mao's point of view, the blonde was taking their sisters away. It seems he won't come out well after this, so he could only offer a small prayer to survive whatever was about to happen. Wait, both girls shouted at the same time. This stopped the two Mao, and they turned their attention to their sisters. Seeing that they had stopped for a moment, the girls continued speaking. What are you trying to do to Naruto? Ria said. Not much, we're just trying to make him understand that you can't steal other people's sisters, the redhead replied, and Sarafal nodded in agreement. Stop. This is not Naruto's fault, it's my fault, the redhead shouted, stepping in front of the blonde. That stopped Surzex, and he stared at Rias, wondering why she said it was her fault if he thought it was Naruto's. What do you mean by that? He asked Rias, looking at her sternly. She became nervous when her brother looked at her that way, but she stopped. It was her fault after all. She had told Naruto not to tell them where she was hiding, and he had helped without protesting. So this was her fault for involving the blonde in this. It's because I told Naruto not to tell you where I was hiding, she said firmly, even though she was dying of nerves on the inside. The Mao just stared at her and at the blonde at the same time. A few moments later, he had a smile on his face and was calm. It seemed that what Rias had said had worked, and no one would get hurt, so both Naruto and she let out a sigh of relief. Well, I guess everything's resolved now, right? He said cheerfully, but on the other hand, a certain older raven-haired girl hadn't changed her initial thoughts. Her sister was still with the blonde, and it seemed that she preferred him to her. How was that possible? Did the blonde want to steal her sister, not the books? Right now, Sarafal had a lot of questions in her head and no answers. She felt annoyed and a little jealous of how her sister preferred the blonde, but she didn't understand why she was jealous. It wasn't much, just a little, but it confused her. Is it because Sotan is happy with him? I guess this is all over now. I found Rias, so I have to go. Thank you very much for your help, he said with a slight bow of gratitude. Those words made Sarafal snap out of her thoughts. Now she didn't know how to respond, what to do, or how to act at that moment. So she simply nodded and gave a small smile. Of course. No problem, if you need help, you can ask me, the blonde told the redhead with a smile. The redhead nodded. She had seen very little of the blonde, but from what little she had seen, she knew he was a good person. So it seemed that she could trust him at least a little more. Oniai-sama, can I come back another day? She asked timidly. She was close to Surzex, so she had taken advantage of the situation to ask him. She didn't know that by asking to come back with such shyness, she had pushed her brother to the limit of being a siskin. So he couldn't refuse her request. He didn't have the will to speak at that moment, so he just nodded. Rias was really happy because now she could play with the blonde guy and make more friends. She was just like Sona, she didn't have many friends in the underworld. She had only met Sona because she was with her sister when they arrived in the Citri territory. She paused for a moment to think about her friends and felt a little down. She didn't have anyone else but Sona and her cousin, who she hadn't seen in several days, so she didn't know where he was. She thought she should introduce him to Naruto. That way, they could all become friends and be together in a group like in one of those strange books with drawings she read out of boredom. In those books, there were groups of friends who played with cards that summon monsters, and with their friendship, they could defeat the bad guys. She really liked that book, but the only downside was that she couldn't remember its name or where she had left it. I guess I'll have to search to find out where it is, she told herself. Well, it's time to go, Rias, she informed the redhead, and she nodded after saying goodbye to the others. See you, Sona-chan, Sarafal-sama, Naruto-kun, she said with a smile and stood next to her brother. The redhead had a small twitch in her eyebrow. She wondered how long Rias and Naruto had known each other for her to call him like that. That was what she was thinking, along with thoughts about whether the blonde was some kind of sister stealer. She thought she should be careful with him before he stole Rias' affection. She was her younger sister, and he would always take care of her. She would have continued with that thought, even though she knew she couldn't do anything about what their parents were going to do with her sister. Maybe it's better to let her be happy before they tell her about that. The Mao drew the magic circle, and they left the place, leaving Naruto alone with Sona and Sarafal. Hey, aren't you guys hungry? The blonde asked them. They were about to answer, but their stomachs beat them to it. They blushed a little from the embarrassment they felt at that moment. So Sarafal spoke, I think we should go have lunch, don't you? They nodded and went to the dining room. At night, you can see a tired blonde in the forest, wearing just a t-shirt and pants that some of the mansion's servants had given him. He had asked if anyone had some spare or old clothes he could use for his training. He couldn't wear the clothes he had acquired earlier that day, so he wore the ones they gave him. Luckily, he had several changes, so he could use them without worrying about getting more. I think Kurama went a bit overboard with this. I guess I deserved it a little for laughing at him when I saw it. He couldn't help but laugh when he saw it again. At first, the bijou didn't know what he was laughing at. He thought his partner was going crazy or something. Until he saw why he was laughing so hard. He had a collar with his name on the front in some kind of metal circle, and on the back, there was the seal. Although he could move around in various places now and not get bored, he didn't want to have to wear it all the time. So as revenge for that, he made the blonde's training much more grueling for the rest of the day. If the blonde didn't do it, he could take control of his body and do something worse than what he would have preferred for the training. So he had no choice but to do what Kurama told him. He was on the brink of death, and it was already getting dark. "Hey, Gaki, we need to talk about something I couldn't tell you when we arrived," the bijou told him seriously. "What do you want to talk about?" "It's something important that I couldn't tell you because I thought it wouldn't be very important," he said sincerely. "So, I enter the mental space?" "Yes, I think it's best if you enter." The blonde mentally nodded and decided to enter, not expecting a small surprise. Mental landscape. Naruto had entered and could see Kurama looking a bit annoyed because of the collar he was wearing. It was very likely that he was very upset with him. He thought he should apologize at some point, but not right now, he'd enjoy it for a bit. "Well, now that you're here, I have to talk to you about something a bit serious that I couldn't tell you, and it seems the old man didn't either. Don't take this the wrong way, as it was a condition for gaining so much power. I think you should already know that power sometimes comes with conditions. I think I'm starting to understand a bit, but what do you mean by conditions that come with obtaining power? Can you explain it to me?" "That's what I'm about to do, Naruto. I had intended to tell you when we got out of that weird thing when we arrived, but I was tired, so I put it off," he said wearily and a little bored. "Sigh, I guess I'll never understand how you always manage to get tired. Since you're going to tell me anyway, I don't see any problem," he replied in a relaxed voice. Yes, whatever. What I wanted to tell you is that. Naruto. Do you know what it means to be immortal?" He gave a serious look when he finished speaking. "Immortal? I think I know a bit about that. Isn't it supposed to mean that you can't die or something?" he said with uncertainty. "Since you're not too far off, I don't see a problem in correcting it. But a part was missing, and that's about time. I'm sure you're wondering what this question has to do with anything, right? Now that you mention it, it's a bit of a strange question. Wait. It's not what I'm thinking, is it?" Kurama simply remained silent, indicating that Naruto's thought was not wrong. "What? How is that possible? It doesn't make sense. How is this supposed to have happened?" "To be honest, I don't know the exact answer to that. I remember the old man told me, but he didn't tell me how or why. If he were here, you could probably ask him what happened to find out how this happened. Although, if you want an answer without too much foundation, or rather a theory about why, it's possible that it's because of me and the other bijou. I guess I'll have to find out how all of this happened, but right now, I think I should learn more about this world before anything else. There are many things I don't know, and I have a feeling that I lack a lot of knowledge about this world. You know, I expected a more agitated reaction like the one earlier, but I don't see any problem with this. I'm almost immortal too, at least in terms of lifespan." "That's true, I would have been more upset if they had told me this when I had just arrived in Konoha, but right now, it doesn't affect me as much. I've grown and gained experience in various things, especially in understanding life. The war made me grow mentally in a way I didn't like very much, but I had to do it to save everyone. I won't always be a child, I have to grow to survive in this new world. I think you're on the right track. Just think, before, you were just a brat who couldn't even throw a simple kunai properly. I guess, as you said, you're growing. I think if Kushina and Minato were here, they would be happy to see you like this. Sigh, it seems like I'm getting soft. As a punishment for making me go soft, I'll make your training even harder." "Hey, Kurama." "What's up, Gaki? Do you think it would be a good idea to tell Seraph all the truth?" "I don't know, but if you think you can trust her, I guess there shouldn't be a problem." Naruto thought about it for a while, then made up his mind. He looked at Kurama and said, "I know what I have to do, see you later, Kurama." The bijou nodded and watched as the blonde disappeared from the mental landscape. "I just hope being in this world won't be boring. I didn't come all the way here just for a simple vacation." With that said, He went near a cave that was nearby. Outside the mental landscape. Alright, I know what I have to do, Naruto said confidently. I just hope she doesn't think I'm lying. He got up from the ground and headed towards the mansion. It wasn't too far away, so it would only take him a few minutes to get there. He estimated he would arrive in about 5 to 7 minutes. So, during the entire walk, he was thinking of how to tell her without making her think it was a lie. He went straight to his room. It was too messy to talk to her personally. After taking a shower, he headed to the Mao's room. He knocked on the door and heard her voice. Just a moment, she said desperately. Naruto nodded, even though she couldn't see him, so he waited for a few moments until he heard her approaching the door. Who is it? It's Naruto, I wanted to tell you something. Is it something important? She asked curiously. Yes, it's something I wanted to tell you, and I don't think I can put it off, he replied a bit shyly. Okay, what do you want to tell me? It's something personal. Can I come in and tell you? When he said that, he could hear everything moving at great speed, and Naruto didn't understand why everything sounded like that. So he just shrugged and asked. Hey, are you okay? Why do things sound like that? It's fine. I'm just tidying up a bit, you don't need to worry. Well, I guess I'll wait a bit more. Do you need any help? No. I mean, your help isn't necessary right now. Please wait a bit. The blonde fell silent, waiting for her permission to enter. Now that he thought about it, this would be the first time he would enter a girl's room. He got a bit nervous for no apparent reason, but he quickly managed to shake it off. He took a deep breath and heard Sarafal talking. You can come in. Upon hearing that, it didn't take long for him to open the door. When he did, he was a bit surprised. The room was very clean, it seemed to be shining. It seemed a bit strange, as it was getting dark, and being this clean in the dark was quite an achievement. Alright, what did you want to tell me? She spoke with a smile. Naruto hadn't paid attention to Sarafal when he entered, so when he saw her, he was stunned. She wasn't wearing the same dress as before, now she was in her pajamas, which were pink. The color suited her well, and her hair was down. Naruto thought she looked really good with her hair down. It's not like she looked bad with her hair in pigtails, but seeing her like this caught his attention. I wanted to tell you something that I didn't know if I should tell you. It's a bit complicated to explain, so you may not believe me, he replied after regaining his senses. That's okay, if you can't tell me, you don't need to. Sarafal said in a compassionate tone. The blonde shook his head in a negative manner and said, It's not that. It's just that. I wasn't completely honest with you. What do you mean? Naruto took a deep breath and spoke again. I mean, I'm not from here.